listener production.
Hey, Chris Spear with you. Welcome to The Briefing. There's been heated debates around free speech in Australia and abroad in recent weeks, with people disputing whether we should have the right to share our views freely in public and online.
The real danger here is taking a very binary approach of either saying we're pro-free speech or we're pro-hate speech laws. The answer isn't one or the other. We seem to have lost the ability to disagree in a civil and respectful way.
So what exactly are the laws here in Australia and where do we draw the line? That chat with the Australian Human Rights Commissioner is coming up in the second half of this episode. First though, let's get into the headlines with Tara Cassidy. It's Wednesday, the 1st of October.
Hey Chris, and to you listening, there's more concerns that several sunscreens aren't doing their job, with another 10 pulled from shelves or paused from sale over concerns about their SPF claims. The TGA made the announcement yesterday after testing a base formula used in 21 sunscreens claiming to be SPF 50+, warning many are unlikely to have a rating of more than 21 and some as low as 4. Now, it brings the total of sunscreens that have either been recalled or paused from sale across the country to 18.
Yeah, so that base formula that was tested was made by Wild Child Laboratories, which has also been used in Ultraviolet's Lean Screen 50+ that was recalled back in August. So in its statement, the TGA listed those additional 20 products it had identified with the same base formula, with brands like Emco Beauty, Naked Sundays, Ethical Zinc, Aspect Sun, Aesthetics, and New Day Skin on the list as well. We'll pop that full list in our broadcast channel on our Instagram if you want to have a look. But now the TGA is advising that although Wild Child Labs has stopped supplying this particular base, Aussie should consider alternative products until their review is fully completed.
Yeah, and interestingly, the TGA also flagged major concerns with a UK lab, PCR Corp, that is used by several sunscreen brands in Australia to back their SPF claims, with Consumer Group Choice urging companies to reveal which labs verified their results and now calling for stronger testing and tighter regulation, which, I mean, with Australia the leader for melanoma rates in the world, Chris, this is definitely a concern.
In a shock to absolutely no one, Aussie house prices are up for an 8th month in a row.
Surprise, surprise.
Yes, Tara Cassidy, national dwellings have recorded their strongest monthly gain since October 2023, having climbed by 0.8% in September, with an average $18,000 added to the cost of a home, according to property researchers at Fertility. The national median home value is now sitting at just over $850,000, with Sydney still in the top spot at $1.24 million. Brisbane second, Tara, at just under $970K, and Canberra third on just over $885,000.
That's the median. I'd hate to see what the average prices are. Anyway, Cassidy says the increase is due to a lift in consumer confidence following earlier rate cuts, overall real wage growth, and anticipated activity driven by government schemes, which brings us to today, where eligible first home buyers can now get into the market with as little as a 5% deposit, with the federal government acting as a guarantor for that remainder of the 20%. Now, modelling from the government suggests that the policy will only lift home values by as little as 0.5% over the next 6 years, but experts say that is too modest and warned first home buyers that are thinking about accessing the scheme to be mindful that they will be paying more interest, which, if we use the example here, Chris, of the median home, so just under $850K, with a 5% deposit, you'll pay around $1.6 million in total home loan repayments over about 30 years. But with a 20% deposit, it'll be $1.3 million. So $300,000 difference. I mean, that is a lot.
A US conspiracy theorist who encouraged and praised the killers involved in the Weiambilla terror attack in rural Queensland has struck a plea deal and will have some of his charges dropped. Donald Day Jr. was in contact with shooters Gareth and Stacey Train before the pair and Gareth's brother Nathaniel gunned down officers Matthew Arnold, Rachel McCrow and neighbour Alan Dare in an ambush in December 2022. After the attack, the religiously motivated extremist posted a video online saying, "Authorities came to kill us and we killed them. We'll see you at home, Don. Love you."
Yeah, and in response, Donald Day Jr., who posts under the name Geronimo Bones, said he wished he'd been with his, quote, brave brother and sister who'd, again, quote, done exactly what they were supposed to do, and that is to kill these effing devils. And that's talking about the police there. Now, officers investigating Day in connection to the terror attack actually raised the alarm with US authorities, who later charged him with possessing weapons and separately threatening the Director General of the World Health Organization and police. And he's now had a number of the charges dropped in exchange for admitting to possessing weapons while a felon, which Day is accused of basically storing them in a mobile home called the Gun Room, according to the ABC.
For the weapons offence, Day is currently facing a possible 15-year jail term and a $250,000 fine. Meanwhile, for his remaining charges, he's still due to face a trial, which Queensland Police are listed to testify at. US prosecutors will use the evidence connected to Weiambilla to help prove Day's motive or intent in relation to the other threats he's accused of.
A medical breakthrough could transform the future of the fertility sector, with scientists discovering how to grow human eggs from mere skin cells. The process could expand the capabilities of IVF treatment to help some same-sex couples have children, as well as older women or those unable to fall pregnant due to illness and after things like chemotherapy. Now, according to researchers, they basically take the cells, remove the nucleus and place it in a donor egg and then fertilise it and mature it from there.
And apparently the skin cells don't just have to come from potential mothers, they could also potentially be made from men's skin cells as well.
Wow.
Now, it's only in its early stages, with scientists saying there's still a long road and many challenges ahead, but those in the space have dubbed it a true breakthrough, a major advancement for the fertility sector and more hope for future hopeful parents. And interestingly, the science behind this breakthrough actually draws from the same somatic cell nuclear transfer that was used to create the first cloned mammal, Dolly the sheep, back in the late 90s.
And police in Victoria have gone the extra mile for one hungry customer after pulling over his delivery driver in the early hours of the morning yesterday. Melbourne's Dylan Collins was expecting to open the door to a DoorDash driver with his Macca's meal, only to instead get an apology call from him saying he'd been pulled over by the cops for driving an unregistered car.
Mentioned that he got pulled over in an unmarked car and he couldn't drop the food off.
That audio thanks to Seven, but the good old cops who pulled him over made the 10-minute trip anyway to drop off this guy's food. 5 stars for those officers, I think, don't you think, Chris?
Yeah, it's brilliant. I love this. I love these stories of when cops, really do take their call to serve and protect to the next level. I mean, my favourite is when I get high-beamed, and it's happened to me once or twice. I've been high-beamed by officers warning me that there's a mobile speed camera ahead.
That is unusual.
Unusual, which I absolutely love, and above all, respect. And that actually got us thinking, what's the most bizarre encounter you've had with police? We'll chuck a prompt up in our broadcast channel Behind the Briefing on Instagram. Let us know. That is it for our headlines for today. Coming up next is your deep dive, Tara, into free speech, hate speech, and how the two have collided in recent weeks. Have a listen to that. It's coming up for you next.
Nearly 120 years ago, a famous quote about free speech was first penned. I disapprove of what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. And in 2025, over a century on, whether that stance rings true or not is still sparking heated discussions today. In recent weeks, comments made in the aftermath of right-wing activist Charlie Kirk's death saw some people lose their jobs, even late-night host Jimmy Kimmel's show temporarily suspended.
You can see how hard the president is taking this.
How are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House.
Yes. He's at the 4th stage of grief, construction.
While closer to home, debate around immigration and racism has brought our own free speech, hate speech and censorship rights to light. Here to discuss this topic today is Australian Human Rights Commissioner Lorraine Finlay. Lorraine, we are hearing a lot of debate around these topics right now. Can you walk me through what free speech looks like in Australia and how it intercepts with hate speech and censorship?
Free speech is really the foundation of democracy. It's something that is so incredibly important, but we know that it also has to be balanced with making sure that we're allowing people to live in safety and free from violence. So free speech has never been recognised as an absolute right. There are always outer limits to it. And here in Australia, free speech is protected in a patchwork way. We don't have the same constitutional protections as the US, for example. We're protected through a common law right and an implied constitutional right of political communication that's been recognised by the courts. And what that means is our protections in Australia aren't recognised in the same way as other places, but they are still there. And there's really this patchwork of law that tries to balance out free speech and hate speech and censorship to make sure that we're reaching a balance between all of those things.
And what are those kind of exemptions to free speech that might intertwine with hate speech, for example?
Well, the key one is that we don't want speech to be used in ways that incites violence or hatred against other people. So hate speech laws are really designed to protect minority or vulnerable communities or people and to stop speech escalating into discrimination or violence. But you always have to strike that really careful balance between ensuring that you're leaving enough space for open discussion, robust engagement, political disagreement, but at the same time protecting those outer limits where it spills into violence or hatred.
And do any examples come to mind that people might know about when it comes to this discussion around free speech and hate speech in Australia?
There are a lot of really high-profile examples, but actually the more important examples are those quieter, everyday examples of people being just subjected to horrific abuse in their workplaces, by their neighbours, when they're out in public. And it's those day-to-day examples that show us the real importance of not just having law to protect us here, but actually having community engagement and understanding around the need to strike that balance between freely saying what you want, but also recognising the impact that has on other people.
And in recent weeks, part of the reason this has come up a lot has been off the back of the death of right-wing activist Charlie Kirk. And there'd been stories about people losing their jobs over comments that celebrated Charlie Kirk's death. If we saw that same kind of broadcast or online commentary in Australia, could such comments constitute hate speech, and could people be penalised over it?
Potentially, but it would have to fall into those particular categories that are actually covered by hate speech, and just generally saying awful things doesn't always meet that threshold. So it's not clear in Australia whether it would, but the important thing it highlights to me is it's one thing to have a law that makes saying those types of things unlawful, but actually I'm not sure saying those types of things should be unlawful. What I am sure about is free speech should allow people to then come back and criticise that and talk about how that is a terrible thing to say, and actually celebrating the death of somebody is horribly insensitive and wrong and not something that we should be encouraging.
When it comes to the kind of factors that are at play, we obviously know about race. Is it also, for example, gender or someone's sexuality? Like, what are the components that fall within this law?
Well, and this is where it gets tricky because there are different laws in different places around Australia and they all have slightly different categories and use slightly different definitions. So it isn't always clear. And again, this is one of the really hard things about balancing free speech and hate speech, because on the one hand, you want to make sure that vulnerable communities are protected. But on the other hand, you don't want to start carving out things that you can say and things that you can't say, and not having that really clear line so that people actually know what they are and aren't allowed to do, especially if you're making it unlawful. And then laying over the top of all of that is the fact that the law is actually a really small part of what we do here, and a really blunt tool in terms of dealing with this behaviour, because while the law might allow us to ban a particular type of speech, you actually can't say that that's addressing the root causes of the hatred that led to that speech in the first place. And so we need to have a clear understanding of what the law can do, but also where the law's not well placed to deal with this. And actually, the best response to hateful speech is good speech and speech that calls it out and actually encouraging people to change the way they think about these things so that we're not just relying on the law as a blunt tool to stop something from happening, but we're actually reaching underneath and addressing those root causes.
And just in recent days, there was a Sky News show called Freya Fires Up that was actually axed over an Islamophobic segment where a guest went on live wearing bacon rashes on their chest. We've had that, and we commonly see discriminatory and hateful comments online. What difference does it make if someone makes those kinds of comments on, say, a TV channel or at work, on social media, or just at the park with their friend?
I can't comment on individual cases, particularly in Australia, but what I can say generally is human rights apply not only in the real world, the physical world, but they apply online as well. And so saying things, whether you say them to somebody's face or you say them online, can have an equally devastating effect. But it creates real challenges for the law to actually reach into those online spaces and have the same impact in terms of enforcement, which is one of the reasons, again, we need to recognise that the law is only one part of the answer here. And, you know, when I think about the hatred that we're seeing in Australia at the moment, I don't think the answer is more hate speech laws or strengthening hate speech laws. The answer is actually looking at, as a community, what are we doing to respond to that? What are we doing to reach underneath and actually change hearts and minds and really see the common humanity in each other? And, you know, you referred to Charlie Kirk before. One thing that Charlie Kirk said that I wholeheartedly agree with is that when we stop talking, that's when we risk violence. So we need to actually be creating more spaces for people to be engaging respectfully and having those conversations, even disagreements, rather than trying to narrow that space and police what people are saying.
Do you think the differences in these laws and articles that people might read online from the US compared to Australia has played a role in why people might feel free to just say whatever they like?
I think it does, but I think as well, people online feel a sense of freedom and disconnection from reality, and that you don't have to say it to somebody's face and you don't always see the reaction that it causes or the harm that it causes to somebody. So I think there is a lot of work that we need to do in online spaces in terms of ensuring there's spaces that get back to what the internet was meant to be, which was this great opportunity to democratise information and to give people the opportunity to freely express themselves. But we need to find ways of doing that don't result in just explosions of hatred. And at the moment, I think one of the challenges in Australia is finding a way to strike that balance, to ensure that we have settings that mean we can ensure people feel safe and secure in their day-to-day lives, but that we're not restricting free expression and freedom of speech in the way that just shuts down the type of discussion that we need to be having to have a thriving democracy.
Right now, we do have a racial discrimination case that's before the courts in Australia, and it's to do with Pauline Hanson's comment that she made to Senator Marine Faruqi, where she told her to, quote, piss off back to Pakistan, which would suggest, depending on the outcome of this appeal, that our hate speech laws are working as they should. However, as we've talked about, we do see a lot of the same kind of rhetoric at anti-immigration rallies and everywhere across social media. Is there more work to still do in this space?
Oh, there's a huge amount of work to do in this space. And certainly I'm not commenting on any one particular case, but what I would say is the real danger here is taking a very binary approach of either saying we're pro-free speech or we're pro-hate speech laws. The answer isn't one or the other. We do need to have those outer limits and those safeguards in place so that we don't allow speech to incite violence or incite hatred. But the flip side is we can't be shutting down reasonable debate and discussion and opinions. And, I say free speech is a really easy human right to support when people are saying things that you agree with. But where free speech actually matters is when you're providing space for views that you might absolutely find distasteful or offensive or even hateful. And we've got to find ways to strike that better balance, particularly in the current environment where we seem to have lost the ability to disagree in a civil and respectful way. We have to find ways of creating that constructive space and engagement, seeing the common humanity in each other and not just relying on the law to come in and try to ban things that we don't like. We actually need to reach underneath, try to understand what's going on and find a way to navigate those differences.
Yeah, absolutely. Really great point. Lorraine, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for joining me on The Briefing.
Thanks so much for having me.
That was Australian Human Rights Commissioner Lorraine Finlay speaking with me there. And that's it for this episode of The Briefing. If you found this ep interesting, don't forget to leave us a comment or a review, or you can check us out on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. I'm Tara Cassidy. See you next time.